The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, Georgia Bulldogs, New Year's Day, Sugar Bowl, college football playoff. It's going to be a spectacle, folks. Giving you some early look into what to expect about these Georgia Bulldogs. Let's talk about this team, strengths, weaknesses, and a little bit of oddities on the show today. Ryan Roberts, A to Z Sports, breaking down everything Notre Dame football. Was at the first ever home college football playoff game against the Indiana Hoosiers, 27-17 victory. And I think you all can tell from my last couple videos, the voice is still recovering. So, you can throw the insults into the chat, throw the jokes. I can take it. You all appreciate you all, though, for sticking with me through the men's here. And we'll be good by the Georgia game on January 1st, New Year's Day. It's going to be a huge one, folks. And I wanted to give you all a little bit of early, just general understanding of this Georgia Bulldogs football team, because it's a very unique one. I think they present a lot of challenges, obviously, but I do think there are some weaknesses and there are some oddities on this team that I think that are just something to be aware of. So we'll be breaking it down at A to Z Sports up until the football game and afterwards, and giving you a little bit of insight into this Georgia Bulldog football team. But wanted to give just some early little tidbits that I thought were semi-interesting, a couple offensively and then one on a other unit that I think is worthy of mention. So let's start with the quarterback situation, because that's what everyone wants to talk about. It's already been ruled out that quarterback Carson Beck, 28 touchdowns this year, will not be available for this game. He's recovering from a UCL injury in his throwing elbow, which is now being reported that it's going to require surgery. And if it does, which it's expected to, that means that Carson Beck will be out for the remainder of the playoffs. And then that's going to make his just general future a little bit murky. Does he enter the NFL draft if he need? Because there's a chance that if it's as severe as some people think, that he might need Tommy John surgery. So that's a long recovery. So if you go back to school and then, I don't think you can go back to school. So you're just a day 3 football player that is kind of stashed in an IR for a year. I think that's kind of the most reasonable or most likely scenario that ends up happening. But either way, Notre Dame is not going to have to worry about Carson Beck. Instead, they're going to have to worry about Stockton, who's a redshirt sophomore, former 5-star, but he hasn't played a ton. So he's a very inexperienced quarterback. He's only thrown 51 career passes, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in his career. He is, generally speaking, viewed as the more athletic compared to Carson Beck. And he very well might be, but he's also very inexperienced. So Notre Dame is going to be facing a talented but just lacking of live reps at quarterback in this upcoming game. So Stockton in, Carson Beck out. And I think that it's a really interesting comparison, because the next talking point I wanted to hit on here was you have an inexperienced quarterback. So typically what you would say is we have to lean on the run game, right? You have to take some pressure off his back. You got to be able to supplement some of the lost success that you have with a Carson Beck. But the problem is that this Georgia rushing attack is the second worst rushing offense, and I went back and researched this, in the last 30 years for the Georgia Bulldogs. They are only averaging 129.2 yards per game on the ground and 4.2 yards per carry as a team. That per game average, if it stood today, would be the lowest of the Kirby Smart era. And it would be the lowest of Kirby Smart era by almost 50 yards. The lowest total, other than this one, was 174.2 during the COVID year in 2020. So we're talking about historically bad rushing attack for this Georgia team, one that Kirby Smart has not seen. If you want to find a rushing attack that is close to this one, or the one that is lower than this one, you have to go all the way back to 2006 under Mark Richt, where that team only averaged 127.4. Those two are the two lowest since 1994. So 30 years, we have only seen 2 rushing offenses as bad as we have seen this year. And that tells me that Notre Dame is facing an inexperienced quarterback and an underwhelming rushing attack. That is pretty good odds for the Notre Dame defense to be able to keep this a low-scoring game. So a very historically bad rushing offense for the Georgia Bulldogs combined with inexperienced quarterback play is a pretty interesting scenario for them. Now, the Georgia defense is going to be one that people are going to talk about a lot, and I totally understand, because the Georgia defense is great, or it's a very good unit. Maybe not quite great. It's not quite as good as it has been in years past, but it's still a very good unit across college football. Now, arguably, though, the best unit that Georgia has just in general is the special teams. And I think that if we're talking about a low scoring game where the difference might be by a point or two, I think that this could be the difference for Georgia. We know the struggles that Mitch Jeter and the special teams has for Notre Dame. Georgia has not had it, at least from a place kicking perspective. They have a young man named Peyton Woodring, who is 20 of 22 on field goals this year. That's 91% on field goals with a long of 55 yards. He has also converted on all 47 extra points. They also have a terrific punter in Brett Thorson, but Brett Thorson is unfortunately out for this football game. He was hurt during the SEC championship game against Texas as well, but he is averaging over 47 yards per punt, 47.6, which was tied for 6th nationally. So special teams for Georgia from a place kicking and punting perspective has been tremendous. What does Georgia do in the place of Brett Thorson? I'm not 100% sure. But if this is a game that comes down to a last-second kick, the difference could be Peyton Woodring versus Mitch Jeter. And right now, Georgia clearly has that advantage. We are going to be breaking down the rest of Georgia offensively, defensively, special teams, and everything leading up to this game, folks. Make sure you subscribe to AZ Sports. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Comment below. What worries you about Georgia? Where do you think Notre Dame can take advantage of? And we'll talk to you next time. As always, go Irish.